So we did talk about selflessness last week. What is selflessness really means? So how can one transition from a selfish state to selflessness? So here the selflessness only start one can only be selfless. Again, like I said last week, the selflessness is totally misunderstood. It is not a mental act where I would say I don't expect anything from this life, or, on the name of sacrifice and generosity, I can't give up anything. We used to have this in one of the movies, in Telugu movies especially. So that guy is become selfless and he started giving away money to the poor and started feeding poor and things like that. At the end, because of his misunderstood, misconstrued generosity, finally he himself becomes the beggar. And then the comment is, so what did he achieve by being selfless? So that is not the kind of selflessness we are looking at here, or that's not how selflessness has to be understood. It is a way of recognizing this entire existence as one. When we recognize, I mean, it's not even a mental construct, like I said. It's a total understanding, recognition of that oneness, that fraternity. When that comes, our every action becomes more constructive and more, should I say, for the greater good. Right from saving the nature, like how we, for example, using of plastic. Right now, today, usage of plastic, should we use it or not, depends on whether it is causing me some kind of a cancer or not. But if you look at it a greater good, we make measurements to protect this nature, we take measurements to protect ourselves, our neighbors, everything, simple things, you know by not cutting down trees, things like that, right? So it kind of extends to many levels. From an spiritual perspective, recognizing that oneness of the nature, feeling part of that one nature, then we try to harmonize all our relationships. So we become non transactional in nature. For everything, right now, today, we are in a transactional nature in every relationship, wife and husband, and parents and children, neighbors, everything at a certain level, some transaction is involved. But when I become non transactional in nature, the first thing happens is we stop transacting with God. The biggest problem is where we start transacting with the God and the Guru. Oh, I am such a devotee, so, better Lord, you help me in winning the lottery, right? So things like that, of that nature. So our devotion is only when it becomes non-transactional. All that what matters is I am a devout. That's it. There's no expectation from the God to which we are devoted. Because then you recognize that universal nature of that Lord in my heart, in our hearts. We recognize it. Once we recognize it, there is no need to ask anything anymore. Then prayer sort of changes its form from me and I. to the entire existence. So my prayer is never for the self, but for the all humanity, all existence, all life. Then I become selfless. So if you understand this selflessness, then you will also recognize once you reach the sixth point, this sort of nature internally starts developing. So you will yourself understand and recognize it, realize it within. So that's the transformation of selflessness we are talking about here, right? So that's why crossing the heart region bring about heightened sense of empathy and compassion, cultivating angelic qualities within you, right? So this is what we sort of transform into automatically. So reflect and renunciation, relief and renunciation, sorry. So one of the most pronounced feelings you experience upon crossing the heart region is a sense of relief. For perhaps the first time in your life, the pinpricks of likes and dislikes have dwindled to almost nothing, and the emotional turmoil that used to bother you has settled. Because once we cross this fifth point, until fifth point, it is called Pinda Pradesh, means the bodily region. Bodily region also means it's a body and mind. Once we cross that, when we reach the sixth point, because if you see all the point one, two, three, four, five are related to the opposite of emotions, calmness and disturbance, right? And so if you look at all these opposite emotions, once you go above the opposite of the emotions, so you are not overly calm, you are not overly disturbed. You are moderate, in a moderate state. So once that moderate state is achieved, sometimes it is good to be angry, sometimes it is not good to be angry. Sometimes it's good to be have that fear, sometimes it is good to be fearless. You understand? So all these opposite emotions are required in us. So when we reach the moderation, I'm not overly depressed, neither I am overly happy. There is a moderation. So we swing this way a little bit when it is required. We swing the other way a little bit when it is required. So we are not suppressing any human emotions anymore. The problem, the suffering happens, because someone said animals go through pain but they don't suffer. You have seen in all this, if you watch this National Geographic videos, sometimes a deer gets hurt by a tiger but it escapes from its claws. It's badly hurt, bleeding. It goes through the pain but it doesn't suffer because they don't carry this emotional baggage. Perhaps maybe they don't they go through the pain but they don't question why am I going through this pain. That's why there is no suffering, because we sway in one direction so much, it causes suffering. Even pleasure, over pleasure causes suffering, over happiness causes suffering, over success causes suffering, and all the opposites also cause suffering. So basically, because we don't know how to stay in that moderate state, we undergo a lot of enormous suffering, rich or poor alike, right? So that's why when we go over this Pind Pradesh, go into this mind region, we start feeling free. Freedom for what? Freedom from this all this burden we carry within our minds, because we cannot stay in the moderate state. So your devotion has matured to a level where you sail through storms with poise, because you are assured of a higher power guiding the helm. So the words God, divine, and source, which had been intellectual concepts until this point, now become feelings in your heart. So when it becomes a feeling in your heart, that feeling in your heart that you are guided by this higher essence is real faith. Until then, your faith is an emotional dependency you are trying to create. But here, it is no longer an emotional dependency, it is a realization that the higher is always guiding you. But because of our emotional indulgement, we are not seeing that higher support. So now we kind of start to see that. So, such a new flavor of consciousness brings a real relief. Spiritual restlessness present, but it is a subtler and more potent. So, the other change one can notice is the refinement in one's renunciation. As you may recall from the way back, the first chakra, renunciation is the feeling of loving detachment, where you are involved but not ensnared. It starts developing the heart region and becomes more refined as you travel the mind region. So at this stage, the opposite of the 5 C's and 5 D's no longer sway you, and you are free from ulterior motives and personal prejudices. You see, like here, how the transition is happening. Renunciation, non attachment, we hear it time and again. So, non attachment means giving up something. But how do I develop non attachment without giving up? It is not an act anymore. Detachment, the sort of non attachment we are talking about, is not an act anymore. It's not a mental construct anymore. It is a state where you are attached but non attached. You see that state? So that means you're not giving up, you're not running away just for you to detach. You're very much in it, you're very much acting in it, but at the same time, you are in a different state of existence. So that is a true non attachment. So, like you see how all these terms are so much misunderstood that we unnecessarily put some pressure on it just because we read about non attachment. But in a true state of non attachment, there is no pressure on your mind. There is no emotional baggage you are trying to discard. That's why this whole spiritual process has to be understood correctly. In spirituality, there is no exclusion, it's all inclusive. We are not excluding all our emotions. We are becoming stoics, stone like. If you literally translate all the instructions from the scriptures, regardless, I mean, of all the religious scriptures, it makes you feel like you have to become a stone. If I have to do a literal translation of Indian scriptures, how one should be, I can only say a stone can be like that. That means every stone is a saint. But that's not true. That's how we misconstrued everything. Oh, I have to give up this. I have to give up that. I have to keep on. You're only talking about what you should be giving up. It's a lot of mental pressure, and there is no growth in such giving up. But naturally, when I reach this state of non attachment without detaching, then it's a permanent state and it's a true state and it's an ennobling state, enlightening state. You see the fundamental difference there? When you follow these precepts literally, you turn into a stone. But when you follow it with the right approach and right state of mind, then it becomes enlightening. No burden. We are free. To become free, you don't have to give up. That's the fundamental idea here. So when the first chakra becomes active, it emits vibrations corresponding to the sacred word Om. Om is often associated with Hinduism, but it is more than a Hindu symbol. It's a primordial vibration of space that has been heard by saints and mystics. So the arousal of Om in the heart happens naturally and should not be forced through mental techniques. As the journey progressed beyond the sixth chakra, the vibration of Om spread throughout the body. It is called Anahat, Ajapa, meaning natural vibration of the heart. See, this word japa means chanting. When that state of chanting becomes natural, then it becomes ajapa. That means I am in that state without chanting, right? So that's why it's a natural state of vibration of the heart which is resonating with the Om. So, Om is a vibration, it is not any mantra or a symbol. It is denoted as a symbol representation of the Brahman, but in a true essence, it is a state. And that vibratory state, because it sounded like Om, which covers everything, all syllables in three letters, that's why it has gained certain significance in our scriptures. So I'll stop here. Any comments, questions, or any aspects you would like to discuss? We have about 5 minutes. Then we can get into meditation.
You mentioned Om,
Huh?
but yet you say that if we focus on what we utter or listen to, then we become that. But that's not what we want. We want to become our higher essence,
Correct.
correct?
Correct. So, for
And putting
example,
that in perspective, then when do you use, or should you even use Om, or is it just a concept?
it is just a concept. So that's why what we are talking about. See, there are a lot of people who practice chanting of Om for years. After a few years, when you're chanting in a with the right understanding and right pronunciation, that feeling of that Om, that vibratory state, is felt in your heart only when you're chanting or as long as you're chanting. But this through state of this natural meditation, through the technique of heartfulness with the cleaning prayer and transmission, one reaches a very natural state, that vibratory state, which is permanent. So there is, here we are not using any chanting but reaching that state. When you are chanting, while you are chanting, you are in that state and then it will be lost as soon as you stop chanting. So that's the fundamental difference. Because when you're chanting, you're forcing that condition, but your entire system cannot sustain that condition once you stop chanting because we have not progressed to that state, right? So that's why we don't recommend any chanting. Rather, reach that state. Every mantra from the scriptures is encoded with some vibratory state, but it is only ephemeral, short lived. But to make it permanent, there is this other process we are following here. Okay. Thank you, Cliff, for asking that. Okay, so let's get into meditation. Let me stop recording.